What's up, Buttercups? My name is Caitlin Donald, and I am one of the educators at the Dubuque Museum of Art, and this is the next video in the Art Adventures series. Today's tremendous topic is all about still life, part 1. So what is a still life? Everyone has looked at a still life before. A lot of you have probably even drawn one or painted one. A still life is when an artist makes an object or a non-living thing the subject of a work of art, as opposed to, say, a person or an environment like a landscape. The very first still lifes that we know of were the product of ancient Egypt around 3,400 years ago. They were in the tombs, and they were extremely important to the dead. People back then believed that when they died, they would end up in paradise. But there was a problem with paradise. The stuff they had in life didn't travel with them. It would be like if you were suddenly hit by a bolt of lightning and killed, you would end up in paradise, but you wouldn't have your favorite iPhone app. Old school Egyptians didn't have a need for modern technology in the afterlife, but they did need things like food and friends. Many of the first still lifes were crops, fish, and other types of edible goodies. The artworks were thought to become real, actual food that the now dead person could munch on in the afterlife. Along with food, there were pictures of jewelry, servants, pets, and anything else they might need in the great beyond. Along with images and pictures, there might have been actual stuff, too, that the person may have owned in these tombs. The next still lifes that we get are from the ancient Greeks and Romans. This is around 1,900 years ago. And these still lifes were way more decorative and usually showed rich foods and bowls of fruit. Sometimes these paintings were called frescoes because they were painted on a wet wall. And other times the artwork was created by using tiny little cubes to make a mosaic. By the 1600s, flower painting became pretty popular. Artists around this time really began to study everyday objects, and there was a drive to paint in a much more realistic way. The artist Jan Bruegel the Elder would paint these huge batches of flowers, and he would paint them on copper. He would travel far and wide for his specimens, wandering from city to city, or even country to country. Once he found the flower he wanted, he would paint it at the exact moment it bloomed. Then he would move on to another place, find another flower, and paint that one on the same canvas. Not only were the plants from different places, but the actual flowers themselves all had different blooming times. By painting them all on the same canvas all at once, it made for a really strange picture. At first it looks like a normal vase of flowers, but dig a little deeper and you realize that this can't be normal. In doing this, you begin to question the story behind the flowers. Bruegel the Elder clearly put a lot of thought into these paintings, and a lot of work. But in 1669, the hierarchy of genre was born. And where do you guys think still life stood? It was the last in line. It was thought to be the least intelligent and the lowest type of painting. Still life was kind of like this sad background dancer with no lines in the school play. It was seen as just an exercise, something that every artist should practice, but shouldn't really be in a gallery. It shouldn't be celebrated. The still lifes that were done around this time were deeply spiritual and often used symbols to represent ideas found in religion. It's around this time we also start to see the vanitas paintings. Vanitas is Latin for vanity. So take a sec and look at this painting and try to think about what it means. Look at all these objects and what it means when all these objects are put together on a canvas. Got any ideas yet? Vanitas paintings were all about death and how all that cool wealth and status in life didn't really mean much in the end. It's a bit like those Egyptian tomb paintings we talked about earlier, but on opposite day. At the time, Holland was doing pretty well, and certain classes could afford more luxury. The artists of the time attempted to try and remind people not to get too full of themselves. These still lifes often had images of fun stuff like good wine, good food, musical instruments, jewelry, money. And these fun-loving objects were then paired with symbolic pictures of time running out. Artists would paint things like candles, hourglasses, rotting fruit, and of course, skulls. But no matter what happens in history, one thing stays the same. People paint a lot of food, and people paint a lot of flowers. In the 1880s, Vincent Van Gogh painted a bunch of flowers, becoming some of his most famous works. This painting was made with only 3 shades of yellow, showing that if you're creative enough, you can do a lot with very little. Another artist, Paul Cézanne, said that fruits loved getting their portrait painted, and he would often talk about how in painting them he could get a glimpse into their tiny little lives. In one painting, he even adds a skull as a throwback to the old Vanitas paintings. He would often tilt the table so the viewer would get less depth, but a more complete picture. And then Pablo Picasso would use basic shapes to show everyday objects, trying to show all the sides of something all at the same time. He said that he paints objects how he thinks them, not how he saw them. When I was younger, I remember going to class and drawing still lives, and it was the worst. It always seemed like so much work. I think part of it was that I didn't choose my objects. They were chosen for me. To me, it was all just a bunch of random stuff on a table that I had no connection to. I remember all I really cared about was that I at least painted them as well as everybody else. And to this day, I still have absolutely no idea where my old still lifes from all my old classes went. But as I got older, I kind of realized that still life is what you make it. It's great for finding out a style or practicing some techniques. And if you find yourself getting super bored, pick objects that mean something special to you or that represent some idea that you value. You can do what the Vanitas painters did and form a quiet but important message. Or you can treat it more like an experiment, like Picasso, and draw your still life in a radically new way. Still life can be done pretty much anywhere, inside, outside, and it can be done for almost no money. And not only that, but you have a lot of time to work on your art, to figure out what you want to paint and how you want to paint it. For example, an apple isn't going to complain it has to go to the bathroom, and a book doesn't have to worry about whether it's about to start raining. You don't have to research the historical details of a bowl. You can just draw it. With still lifes, you have time to find out how you want to make things. You can practice with no pressure, and you can make what you want when you want to make it. And in the end, I think that's why still life is so cool, is that it can be something emotional and something important and something with a message, or it can be just an exercise. So that's it for this video. I will see you again next week for part 2. I'm going to talk about artists that use still life in a really interesting way. Modern artists, that is. And I really thank you guys for watching. Peace out.